Is it working? I don't think it's working. There we are. Very nice. So very, very many people. I thought tonight that I would do 3 rants with music in between on different, more or less different themes. And the first thing I thought that I should talk about was our founder, our origins in the mushroom. You know, some people think it can be done on the natch. I think you have to be humble enough to eat what grows in shit to pass through the gateway. In other words, you have to find a partner. And as some of you know, the mushroom speaks. It speaks in our own language. It has a rap. And the mushroom's rap is a kind of galactic, hortatory, let's get it together. You give me your hands, I'll give you what I learned out there along the limb of the Milky Way while you were moving up through the slime of this single planet. We've been busy and we know lots of things, but we need the human hand. We need your cooperation. The human beings are the great mystery of the universe. This is what the mushroom said to me. It said, what you call man, we call time. So I thought about this. The mushroom is perfectly adapted to travel through outer space. The spore of the mushroom is as electron dense as many metals. A single Stropharia cubensis mushroom sheds 3 million spores per minute for 6 weeks. A single mushroom into the air. And on any planet where it exists, the spores percolate to the outer atmosphere through Brownian motion because they're feather light and they float hundreds of thousands of feet above the earth where cosmic rays are coming in and the solar wind is hitting the bow wave of the earth's magnetic field. And some of these spores are blown off into space. It's almost a cliche these days to point out that we are made of stuff that was once cooked in the hearts of stars. Every atom in your body was cooked in the hearts of stars before it ended up as part of your dear self. But more impressive to me is the thought that the whole universe is a soup of spores, viruses, viroids, episomes, chunks of data coded into DNA, floating through the cosmos, looking for connection. And the mushroom came here some time ago. How long ago? Who can even imagine? Notice that the mushroom occupies the only karmaless place in the food chain, because fungi live on dead matter. Compared to that dietary style, vegetarianism is an orgy of mass death. That's how karmaless the mushroom's position in the order of being is. And it seems to me, since we've known about DNA since 1950, and we're already talking about designing ourselves, so it seems to me that the mushroom may have began somewhere as a fuzzy primate with an overamped imagination, or an octopoidal organism in a methane ocean, or a slime mold-like swarm in an ytterbium matrix on a hypergravitationally dense planet around a pulsar. But wherever it started out from, it designed itself into this universal package of positive karma. Karma dedicated to novelty and connectivity and sharing of information. Somehow the universe is all one seamless thing in one timeless moment. And we all sentient beings in space and time fall and assume different levels in this hyperdimensional matrix. And we call these levels of failure success. Our world, our point of view, but always above and below us, extending infinitely, is more opportunity, more connectivity. The mushroom understands this. The mushroom is somehow of the pure essence of consciousness and connectivity. And it sees in the human beings a platform in the physical world for the establishment of a community of love. A community of love based on a new kind of relating. Not telepathy. Not you hear what I think. But another kind of telepathy. You see what I mean. You see what I mean because the power of the mushroom is the power to move language out of the realm of what is heard and into the realm of what is beheld. This is the more perfect logos. This is the logos that is three-dimensional and sculptural, beyond contradiction, beyond rhetoric, because it is seen. And this is apparently the higher language of the galaxy, is visibly beheld, syntax that you can take to the bank, as it were. And this is what I think we're being moved toward. Beyond our technologies, beyond our politics, the real message of the mushroom is to transform language into poetry, to make it a vehicle for the conveyance of love. Poetry conveys love. Things are changed from how they are when played upon the blue guitar. But play you must, a tune beyond us, yet ourselves, a tune of things exactly as they are, a tune upon the blue guitar. Since I'm sitting here and the opportunity doesn't come very often, I would like to say, 'tis brillig, and the slithy toes gyre and gimble in the wave, all mimsy are the borogoves, and the mony wraths outgrave. Beware the Jabberwock, my son, the jaws that bite, the claws that catch. Beware the Jub-Jub bird and shun the Firmius Bandersnatch. Long time the Maxim foe he sought, so rested he by the Tum-Tum tree and stood a while in thought. And as in uffish thought he stood, the Jabberwock with eyes of flame came whiffing through the tulgey wood, and as it came, 1, 2, 1, 2, and through his vorpal blade went snicker-snack. He left it dead, and with his head went galumphing back. And hast thou slain the Jabberwock? Come to my arms, my beamish boy. Oh, frabjous day, Callooh, Calais, he chortled in his joy. 'Twas brillig, and the slithy toes did gyre and gimble in the wave. All mimsy were the borogoves, and the mony wraths outgrave. Now I mention this as a lead-in to the second matter this evening, which is dimethyltryptamine, the smell of which I cannot help but discern upon the night air, as in a dream. It was some foreign country, Libya, perhaps. In any case, I thought I knew a lot about psychedelics before I encountered DMT, and it showed me that I knew virtually nothing. And in the interests of the idea that sharing is important and that verbal descriptions of these extraordinary dimensions are the key to building a composite image and understanding them, I would beg your indulgence to simply tell an amazing dope tale, which is, when I was very young, someone came to me who always got there first to everything and said one evening, "Here's something you might find interesting." And I asked only one question, which was, "How long does it last?" And I was told 10 minutes. So I said, "Let the good times roll." And I took 3-4 very large inhalations through a glass pipe. And there was immediately a kind of visual clarity, this same visual clarity that is in psilocybin, the key to our evolutionary breakthrough. It's as though the air had suddenly been pumped out of the room and everything stood out in stark relief. And then I felt like a great hand on my chest pushing me back into the cushions behind me. And I closed my eyes and I could see rotating in space something orange and black, something which now we call the chrysanthemum, something like a mandala, like a flower, like a membrane, which you come up against. And I think later experience has shown if you haven't done enough, this thing resists your further progress and you are like bounced off it. If you have done enough, it parts in front of you. And my impression was of falling forward through some kind of tube that was fluctuating, and when the ceiling and the floor met each other, they adhered and then separated with a kind of and then I was propelled into the next space, and this sucking, pushing, disystolic descent down into a space, a dome space, a space that somehow I intuitionally understood was very far underground, that there was great mass above me, even though the dome was very spacious. And along the walls of this den, this burrow, this hive, crawling hallucinations, everything in motion. But that wasn't what was so startling. In fact, that barely got onto the radar. What was so startling was that this space, which I had arrived in after departing from my home 30 seconds before, was filled with beings, entities of some sort, creatures made of light, like self-dribbling jeweled basketballs, squeaking and squealing for attention, charging forward like badly trained Rottweilers, and crawling over me and pushing into my body. And I was in a... No, it wasn't a bad trip. It was a weird trip. Because the overwhelming feeling was love. Not L-O-V-E, but L-U-V-E. Some other kind of way of relating that was full body orgasmic or something like that. These creatures loved me. And that's the first thing they wanted to tell me. We love you. We love you. and they were jumping in and out of my chest. And I was taking in the situation like this. And I thought I must have died, that this couldn't happen to somebody and come back. But over and above all of this, what was even more astonishing was what these entities were doing. They were making objects out of sound that they were generating out of their bodies. They were singing objects into existence, which they were offering to me as gifts. Look at this, dragging each other away, proffering the mysterious objects. And I knew if I could bring one of these objects back to this world, I would never have to speak again. I would just do what they do. I would say, look at this. And in the act of beholding these things, which seem to be made of flesh and opal and liquid and ivory and music and puns and memories and tastes. I mean, it was not any object that I had ever seen. It had dimensions no object can have, and it was in a state of continuous transformation. And they said, we want you to learn to do this. We want you to learn how to do this. Resist amazement. Do not abandon yourself to wonder, which was very difficult to do in that situation, because do not abandon yourself to wonder, but do this, do what we do. And I could feel in my tummy or my chakra, depending on where you go to church, something like a bubble, something like light, something like pressure, beginning to move up my trachea. And when it reached my mouth flew open, and I began to sing like this. And it felt very good. But it was extremely alarming to everybody else in the room. And what it seemed to be was a kind of glossolalia, language itself trying to claw its way out of the human body and manifest. And that's what these things are all about. They're about a language that can be seen and therefore has no ambiguity because it's not culturally defined. In other words, if I read you a paragraph from Proust, then we can talk the rest of the night about what did the author mean. But if I show you a sculpture and we walk around and we look at it, the ambiguity is of a different sort. We see the same thing. When we read a paragraph of Proust, each one of us interprets it according to our own associations and expectations and history. So this more perfect logos that wants to be born out of the union of the human voice and the psychedelic experience is a kind of telepathy, a kind of perfection of our drive toward community that lies just under the surface, waiting to be coaxed out, waiting to be birthed in the human world through a kind of new music, a music that carries philosophical understanding embedded in it, a new dispensation for language through sound, conceived of as a union of poetry and music. Part 3. By the way, the music tonight is by Pan-Galactus-Spermian, a group that came together especially for this event, I believe. So, there they are. A glacier rattles in the cupboard. The desert sighs in the bed, and the crack in the teacup opens a road to the land of the dead. I thought for my parting shot this evening that I would talk about where we came from and where we might be going. The further back in time you go, the simpler things become, until you reach that famous, infinitely small, infinitely hot, infinitely blue, infinitely dot point from which the entire universe is supposed to have sprung in a single moment for no reason. Now, whatever you think about the Big Bang, notice that it's the limit test for credulity. In other words, if you can believe that, what would you resist? That is the most preposterous and unlikely concept statable in human language. Yet it is the foundation of our cosmology. So, having noted the inherent embarrassment of it, let's move on beyond the initial moment of mystery to everything which follows. You see, that's how science works. Give them one free miracle and they can explain everything. So apparently you get one free miracle when you do this kind of work. So I'll take my miracle and I'll put it in a different place. I don't want a miracle at the beginning of the universe. I want a miracle at the end. So here's why I think I have a reasonable chance of having my wish come true. Because, as I mentioned, when you look back into time, the further back you go, the simpler things are. Immediately after the Big Bang, the universe was some kind of plasma. There were only free electrons. There was no light. There were no atoms. was only this soup of electrons. As time passed, the universe cooled. And as the universe cooled, like water freezing and undergoing various states, different kinds of physics crystallized out. And after a few hundreds of millions of years, stars began to condense out of a primal cloud of hydrogen. That cloud of hydrogen had come into existence when electrons had begun to settle down into stable orbits. But these stars made of hydrogen had enormous pressure at their centers, and this pressure created fusion and the cooking out then of heavier elements like iron, like sulfur, and like carbon. And with the appearance of carbon, suddenly the game deepens, the options intensify, and you get not atomic systems, but molecular systems. Systems of systems come into being for the first time. And these molecular systems eventually take the form of what are called long-chain polymers. And out of long-chain polymers come DNA. DNA is a self-replicating chemical system that somewhere along the line acquires so much additional molecular detritus surrounding it that it begins to write philosophy. All of these processes happened very, very slowly. The production of primal hydrogen, the condensation into stars, the early birth of planets, complex carbon chemistry on some of these planets, the emergence of life. But as you approach the present, things accelerate. With the coming of animals, the earth is transformed. The surface of the earth is transformed. In a way, we can think of biological evolution, I mean, this is the way I think of it, as a conquest of dimensionality. The earliest forms of life were fixed slimes on rock surfaces. Later forms of life were blindly groping slimes that contacted their world physically by touching it. Later, some of these organisms evolved light-sensitive patches of cells on their surface that gave them the notion here and there. They understood that food is at the light, energy is at the light. If you have an organ which shows you where the light is, you can move toward it, and you and your progeny will survive. Out of that primitive gradient sensing kind of surface emerge the marvelously coordinated eyes of squids and human beings and other higher animals. The evolution of the animal body, able to spring through space, to walk, to fly, to swim, is the conquest of space. Apparently, this is what biology is. It's a strategy for a chemical conquest of dimensionality. Now, it all proceeds in this evolutionary and genetic mode until you reach our own dear selves. And somewhere in the last 5 million years, we invented what are called epigenetic processes. Processes not under the control of genes, but under the control of human decision, imagination, artistic impulse, whim, perversity, if you will, but not genetics. Epigenetic activities are language, dance, speech, religion, costuming, everything that is not genetic. Culture, if you will. Once these epigenetic processes began to unfold, the previous domain of unfoldment, animal evolution, was left in the dust. And over the past million years, pick a number, human beings have become, as it were, the focus of the intention of novelty to express itself on this planet. And while the rest of nature has ridden at a slow equilibrium, subject only to natural selection and genetic drift, the human world has set out on a furious elaboration of religions, languages, technologies, migrations of people, so forth and so on, leading to the present moment. We tend to take credit for this, to think of this as a human phenomenon. I don't think so. I think we are corks in the ocean, and that the wave that carries us towards starflight is a wave that began rolling in this direction when the first slimes organized themselves in the primordial oceans of this planet. In other words, nature has an appetite for complexity. Nature is not neutral about the process of evolutionary advance and complexification. Somehow, biology's conquest of dimensionality depends on this complexifying function. Well, now, an interesting thing about this idea, if you take it seriously, is it changes the way we see human beings. Human beings are no longer simply the chance existential accident of cosmic force set here to witness chaos and make contextualized judgments about it the way modern philosophy tells the story. No, it turns out human beings are, at this point in the cosmic drama, on this planet, the focus of this intent toward novelty, the focus of this intent of nature to break through her own boundaries and transcend. I mean, imagine, try to get the perspective on what it means that a talking monkey can trigger on this planet the processes which light the stars that hang in heaven. This is what we've come to. Through the power of mind, we can pull down energy that by any measure is cosmic, by any measure is godlike. But how wise are we? This becomes the question. My faith is the fact that we have not destroyed ourselves after 50 or 60 years of having the power to create our own apocalypse on a 30-minute notice seems to argue that for all the hysteria and squirreliness of our political institutions and our leaders, there is ultimately at the abyss a certain reticence to push the whole thing into extinction. I believe this certain reticence is what we need to cultivate. It can become the compass of our evolutionary process. We want to build community. Nature and technology are pushing us toward one organism. We are melting into each other. Our identity is the illusion of a set of cultural values that have become obsolete. We are not the print-created Barbie dolls of democratic fantasy. We have rediscovered and expanded back into the animal body and the animal mind. The further ingression of novelty demands the ending of human history and the reproduction of a kind of archaic collectivity. We have to generate a system of wholeness fractally out of each individual through a recovery of identity, responsibility, and a sense of placement within the community. And this is what the psychedelics catalyze. They catalyze an authentic inventory of our humanness. And when we carry out the authentic inventory of our humanness, we discover that we have sold ourselves short, that we have sold our birthright for a mess of pottage, a world of stucco, polyester, plastic, and pornography. when what we could have had was a world as alive as we are, a world as vital as the billion-year concordance of forces that carried us to this moment of opportunity. So I take it to be everyone's personal job to deconstruct their own commitment to the now failed cultural model that is dragging us down, and then to turn with their friends, human, plant, and otherwise, toward the building of a new community of intelligence that embraces all of nature and sees the human mind as special only in the depth of its obligation to give care to the project of being. That's what it's all about. Care for the project of being through authentic community and through an authentic relationship to one's own identity. And I don't believe that this level of health can be achieved without the intersection of the little doctors from the other dimension. Thank you very, very much.